Let me pick up first on Sean's reference to conflating, uh, conflating WikiLeaks with the DNC, Democratic National Committee, emails. Now, that was a big deal when the so-called intelligence community assessment came out, because they were very clear. It was not only the Russians, it was Vladimir Putin himself that authorized the hacking, and that was the genesis of the whole thing. Now, what I like to point out to people who haven't followed as closely as some of us have, President Obama was briefed on this, the intelligence community assessment. Now, I have to, again, emphasize that only one of those words is correct. It was an assessment. It wasn't intelligent, and it wasn't a community effort. It was hand-picked analysts by James Comey, okay? So let's put that into perspective right there. Now, when that came out, it looked very, very damaging, of course, because the CIA, NSA, and the FBI said it happened. And so they briefed President Obama on the 5th of January, 2017. And they say, here it is, Mr. President, you ordered this up. We're gonna brief President-elect Trump tomorrow. This is what we found. With high confidence. We're just still assessing. We can't prove it, but it was actually Putin that did this. Okay, so I can see Obama sitting down there and said, yeah, right. Clapper, the whole gang of four, right? Okay. Well, the proof is in the pudding. It's a very key thing as to whether Russian interference, if there was, had any link with WikiLeaks. And what did Obama say, 13 days later, on the 18th of January, 2017? He said, and this is a quote, the conclusions of the intelligence community with respect to how Russian hacking got to WikiLeaks are inconclusive, end quote. So you have inconclusive conclusions from the mouth of the sitting president 2 days before he leaves office. Now, why would he say something like that? Well, I had a chance to ask James Clapper, the principal briefer, the head of national intelligence, that very question 1 month ago. I said, how do you explain that the president sort of contradicted you just 13 days later? And Clapper said, I can't explain that. Can't explain that. Well, hold on, it's pretty key, isn't it? So if you can't prove, if you don't even have evidence that there was Russian hacking, which there isn't evidence of, and once you prove that, if you can't prove a link between Russian hacking and WikiLeaks, well, you're nowhere. And Americans don't know that, okay? That's a really fundamental problem. So as you know, Joe, and Sean, perhaps you know this too, we have in our group, Veteran Intelligence Professionals for Sanity, 2 former technical directors of NSA. Whoa. Yeah, they left. They left because they were fed up with the shenanigans that were going on there. Now, what did they say? Well, they looked at some forensics done by independent forensicators, okay? They looked at them and they determined that what's represented as a Russian hack can't be a Russian hack. And the principle is very simple. I'll just explain it very, very briefly. It has to do with the physics principle of liquid dynamics, okay, fluid dynamics. Now, what does that mean? Well, if you have a pipe, right, and you have a certain diameter or certain dimensions to this pipe, then the water can't flow any faster through this pipe except as it's limited by these dimensions. Now, the internet's a pipe, okay? And we know what the internet was capable of flowing through in July of 2016. And the so-called download from the internet, the hack, was downloaded at a speed 3 times, count them, 3 times faster than the internet was capable. What does that mean? That means that it was copied onto a thumb drive and then, distributed. That's what we think happened with the DNC emails. We think Seth Rich, yeah, I'll say Seth Rich. I mean, this is not a conspiracy theory. There's lots of evidence that it was Seth Rich, disenchanted by what he saw in the DNC emails, put a little thumb drive into the DNC computer, got him out to somehow priority mail, maybe, to Julian Assange or one of his lieutenants. That's key, okay? And then the other things, gosh, there's so much else that could be commented on. Joe, you asked me to talk about Vault 7.
Yeah, well, Sean brought it up, yep.
Yeah. Now, this is maybe interesting. It is interesting to me. I go on RT, I go on Sputnik, I go on any place that asks me. They used to ask me at CNN and CBS and the McNeil Lehrer show in those days, but they don't ask me anymore. I can't understand it, right? Okay.
Why would they?
So RT calls me usually around noon. They've had their morning meeting. They want me to come in at 3 o'clock to do a little, okay, I do 5 minutes of whatever. This time, they call me at 7 in the morning. It was the 31st of March, 2017. So we're going, hello, it's RT. Can you come right in? I said, I beg your pardon? It's RT. I said, well, wait a second. You're not even open now. What do you mean? I said, is it a crank call? He said, no. Look, we just sent you an email. Read it. It's about Vault 7 Marble Framework. So I said, okay. Call me back in 10 minutes. So I read this thing. And I'm like, God, it shows that this capability, Marble Framework, was used during 2016, okay? And that it allowed a entity to hack into a computer or a server, disguise who hacked in, and leave little telltale signs like, 5 languages: Chinese, Korean, Arabic, Farsi, and Cyrillic, Russian. And sure enough, there was some telltale signs there. Okay, now I say, all right, I'll be right in, but you open? I said, no, you have to use the Eurovision studios. Okay, so I get in my car, for the cause, I'm driving down the carpool lane, hoping that I don't get gigged for this. I get in there, but then I say, well, wait a second, what am I going to say about this? I mean, I got to call Bill Binney. So I did. Now, Bill Binney is one of the former technical directors of NSA. I said, Bill, do you know about this thing? You know about this marble framework, or you could do these things? He says, oh, yeah, sure. That started when I was still on active duty at NSA. I said, well, tell me about it. He says, well, Ray, what you need to know is that it includes 700 million. Got that, Ray? 700 million lines of code. So history major McGovern says, Bill, that sounds like a lot of code. But he says, oh, yeah, Ray. Look, can you still do arithmetic or mathematics? Can you multiply? I say, yeah. Well, each line of code costs $25. Okay, Ray? Do the math, all right? Wow. So when you go in there, you tell them that I knew when this thing started. NSA, of course, had the brains behind the whole thing, but the CIA took it, and they're the ones that implement these things. And Brendan set up a whole directorate. When I was at CIA, there were only 3 directorates. So there's a 4th directorate for cyber warfare. Oh, so I had a story. So I told RT, I told Sputnik, who asked me later, and another local radio station, but nobody else was interested. And guess what? Even though earlier tools that were described by Vault 7 were reported with a vengeance in the New York Times and the Washington Post, things like a tool that allows somebody to take control of the car, go 110 miles an hour, Actually, that happened in Los Angeles, okay? Another tool, you think your TV is off, right? But it's really on, and it's recording everything goes on in your bedroom or wherever in your house, okay? So those were tools that were announced on the 7th of March, and they were played up big. These are exciting stories, right? And guess what happens on the 31st of March? Well, you know how it works. New York Times goes to the White House or goes to the CIA and says, oh, gosh, we want to, this is quite a story. No, don't do it. Sources and methods, so it'd be terrible. So not a word of this appeared in the New York Times or any of the major publications, except there was one person that didn't get the memo. That was Ellen Nakashima for the Washington Post. She wrote a superb article, a really good article, and it appeared in the Post, but then they didn't say another word about it. So what am I saying here? I'm saying that number one, you can't prove, and Obama admitted as much, you can't prove a link between WikiLeaks and the DNC emails via a hack from Russia. Okay, you can't identify a link between Russia and WikiLeaks. So why do they do that? Well, Sean already talked about that. They want to get Julian Assange for a whole host of other reasons. Now, is this fair? Of course, it's not fair. But how it's playing out is that everyone cites this intelligence community assessment, okay, that really actually said in the assessment that no, these aren't facts. These are, we're not sure, okay, but everybody takes that as gospel. And Bob Mueller has become, Saint Robert Mueller. Last I heard, he was born of a virgin. I mean, the guy is, pretty good. So this is what's going on here, and it's really hard to know about, hard to realize how much pressure Julian Assange is under. Let's see. I want to say one more thing about that, and that is that I was with Julian 3 days before the November election in 2016. I had done a little talk or a debate at Oxford, and I came down and we had dinner together, obviously where he's holed up in the Ecuadorian embassy. He was completely spent, okay? He had this pallor about him that made it look like he hadn't been outside for 4 years, which happened to be the case, okay? But he was exuberant. And Hillary Clinton's name never came up. What was he exuberant about? He was exuberant about the fact that he had been interviewed by John Pilger, and John Pilger had gone out and got it placed, the interview. This is 3 days before the election, right? This is hard, cold fact. This is the kind of currency that Julian Assange deals in. Now, the only negative there was that John Pilger tried to give it to the BBC. We want that. Tried to give Channel 4. Sky News. So he had to give it to RT, okay? And that was less than ideal. But RT was the only person. That's what it is. RT was the only place where he could get it published. But it was published. Now, in our little conversation, we really don't talk much substance, but there was not the foggiest hint that, as the caricature would have it, that Julian said, now I got Hillary, now I got Hillary. He just wanted the facts out. Now, the last thing I'll say, it's already been said, I think, is that Julian deals in unvarnished facts, okay? What he has is what investigative journalists, what detectives lust after, okay? Documents, verified documents. Is Vault 7 under any suspicion? No, the CIA has admitted that they're genuine documents. So this is a big thing. And the ironic thing is that in this intelligence community assessment dated January 6, 2017, the day after Obama was trying to persuade him to believe it, that assessment says the Russians gave it to WikiLeaks because WikiLeaks enjoys this reputation for not changing anything but being very authentic. Talk about a left-handed compliment, All right. So here it is, authentic. Here it is, documentary. What did it say? And that's the key here. It said that Hillary Clinton stole the nomination from Bernie Sanders. Pure and simple. And why did they do the Russian thing? Well, they thought that Trump was vulnerable on Russia, but when they knew that Julian was going to publish these things, then it became a big deal. And so on the 22nd of July, 2016, when WikiLeaks finally published this after 6 weeks of ordering it and, checking it out, okay? That was 3 days before the convention. What did the New York Times say the next day? Why did the Russians do this? Why did the Russians hack into the DNC? Why did the Russians? And the whole thing, nobody says, hey, what's in those emails? Maybe we ought to read if they're authentic, maybe we ought to read them. It was what I call a magnificent distraction. It worked, and they thought it would work throughout the rest of the campaign. Of course, now it's backfiring, and we're seeing that Russiagate is really turning very gradually, it was clear this time last year, into FBI deep state gate. What you remember, what you're talking about, the death penalty and all, brings back a flashback when our Supreme lawyer, Eric Holder, after Ed Snowden ended up in Moscow, he wrote an official memorandum under Justice Department stationery saying to his opposite number, the head prosecutor in Russia, look, please give Ed back. We promise not to torture him, and we promise not to kill him. And I'm saying, my God, Eric Holder said that in this official memo to the Justice Department of Russia. So, yeah. And so here you go. It's the same sort of thing. Now, I think solitary confinement for the rest of your life is worse than death. But I'm against the death penalty, of course. I too would add that I love Julian. He's my friend. Okay, I'm a good friend, and I don't have a problem with anything that he's done. And I think that you're quite right, Dan, in saying that if the only time you see Julian is when he's standing up, facing into the man, facing into the people who are persecuting him, well, he comes across as a little arrogant. Well, hell, he should be arrogant given what he's. So it's a bum rap, in my view. He's a very warm person, one-on-one. And the first time we saw him in the embassy in Ecuador, we were celebrating the Sam Adams Award for that year. Man, we had just a wonderful time. He had only been there 2 years. Now it's going into 7, I think. So I give him some arrogance. If it appears like arrogance, I give him every benefit of the doubt. When I was with him 3 days before the election in November of 2016, he was spent. He had done all he could to make sure that enough information that he was privy to got out into the open with the help of people like you and John Pilger. He did this, and the notion that he would be brought back here where he has no business being here and subjected to the Espionage Act, it's just too much. I'm simply going to invoke something you're familiar with. It's called the NOAA principle. Mike may not have heard about this. It's the NOAA principle is this: no more awards for predicting rain. Awards only for building arcs. We're going to build some arcs here. The rain is flowing. With this new ambassador going there from Ecuador into the UK, they're going to try something, I think, over the Christmas holidays when everybody is distracted, everybody's shopping at Harrods, and they'll just try to get them out of there. And so when I say no more awards for predicting rain, well, we got the rain, and we got plenty of that, and we have to stop grousing about the rain. We've got to figure out what to do now. One of the ideas I had, and I'm very much with you, Mike, in terms of talking about action. I've visited Julian 4 or 5 times, and he's right sort of catty corner from Harrods. Now, Harrods, Harrods, that's where the hoi aristoi do their Christmas shopping. And wouldn't it be terrible to inconvenience them by having a watch going around Harrods on behalf of Julian with posters and give out handouts and so forth? Wouldn't that be a wonderful thing to do? I think it would. Joe added the notion of banging pots and pans, which has a nice revolutionary tradition in and of itself. Last thing I'll say is that there has been a vigil. The Catholic worker in London and from Dublin, Kieran O'Reilly, and his group have been vigiling 24/7 in front of the Ecuadorian embassy. Now, can't we find more than 17 people? I mean, hello, sure we can. All we need to do is kind of say, all right, this is what we're going to do. We may be only 2 times 17 first weekend, but Harrods is a good place to show our mettle, and it may not be the best place. Trafalgar Square may be better. The U.S. Embassy may be still better.